In this particular screencast, you are going to learn how to divide whole numbers and decimals, such as the examples that you can see on the screen below. So before we begin, let's review the different parts of a division problem. The first part that we have in a division problem is known as our dividend. And in this particular example, that would be represented by the 10. So, spelled that wrong. Dividend. And that would be our 10. That's the number that we are splitting up, so that's our dividend. Our second number, our 5, is known as our divisor. And that's the number that we are dividing the dividend by. So that's our divisor. And then finally, our answer is known as our quotient. And once again, the quotient is the answer to a division problem. So let's go ahead and get started by looking at our first example. Our first example is 2 divided by 9/10. So once again, you can see the steps for dividing decimals off to the side. You always want to make sure that you're following these directions or these steps when you are dividing decimals. So the first step says, once again, to change the divisor into a whole number. You can see that our divisor is 9/10, so we need to go ahead and change our 9/10 into the whole number 9 by moving our decimal point one space to the right. And then we need to do the same thing to our dividend. In this case, our dividend is the number 2. In our number 2, the decimal point is found right after the 2, and we need to once again follow our rule, or step 2, that says change the dividend by moving the decimal the same number of spaces as in the divisor. So we need to once again move it one space to the right, and then fill that space in with a 0. So now our new division problem looks like this, 20 divided by 9. We are once again going to use long division in order to solve this division problem. So we're going to go ahead and draw our long division sign, put our 20 on the inside because that is our dividend, and then put our 9 on the outside because that is our divisor. And we're going to go through the steps of a long division problem. Can 9 go into 2? No. Can 9 go into 20? Yes. 2 times 9 is 18. I go ahead and subtract, and I have a remainder of 2. What I need to do next is I need to go ahead and add a decimal point, bring that decimal point up into my answer so that I don't forget, and then add a 0. And I'm going to bring that 0 down next to my 2 to create the number 20. And I'm going to go ahead and continue dividing. Remember, once again, now that we are dividing with decimals, we no longer have remainders, so we need to divide until we get a final decimal answer. So we have to look for whether the decimal terminates, which means it stops, or whether it repeats, so that you have a repeating decimal. So we're going to go ahead and continue and ask ourselves, can 9 go into 20, or how many times can 9 go into 20? And our answer, once again, would be 2. 2 times 9 is 18. I'm going to subtract, and I get a remainder of 2 again. I'm looking at my division problem, and I'm starting to see a pattern here. So I'm going to do one more step, or one more time through my long division. I'm going to add another 0, bring it down next to my 2 to create 20 once again. 9 we know can go into 20 2 times. 2 times 9 is 18. What I subtract to get a remainder of 2. This tells me that my answer up here, 2.22, is actually going to give me a final answer of 2.2 repeating. So once again, my final answer is 2.2 repeating because I keep having that same remainder over and over and over again. Our next example is 23.5 divided by 5. So as you can see, our divisor is already a whole number, so we don't have to worry about steps 1 and 2. We can just skip right to step 3 where we are going to go through the long division steps. As you can see on my screen, I just drew the division problem using our long division sign. So 23.5 goes on the inside of my division sign because that is my dividend, and 5 goes on the outside because that is my divisor. And I'm going to go ahead and solve this division problem. You can go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try and solve this division problem on your own in the example 2 box on your note sheet. As you can see, I went through my steps of long division, and I got a final answer of 4.7, or 4 7/10. And the reason that I know I have my final answer is because I have a remainder of 0 down here at the bottom of my long division problem. So once again, 23 5/10 divided by 5 would give me a final answer of 4 7/10. Our final example today is 22 divided by 8. And you're probably looking at this example saying, okay, these are two whole numbers, I can definitely divide those. But as you'll see as I solve this problem, you're actually going to have to add your decimal and your zero in order to finish off the problem. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my division problem. Once again, the 22 goes on the inside of my division sign because that is my dividend, and the 8 goes on the outside. So go ahead and you can record that in example 3's box. And then I want you to go ahead, once again, pause, go through and solve it, and then hit play once you finish and you have a final answer, and check your answer with my answer. At this point, you can see that I've done my division problem and I have a remainder of 6. At this point, I have to add my decimal, bring my decimal point up into my answer, and then add a 0 and bring that down next to my 6 to create 60. So once again, whenever you have a remainder and no numbers left over to bring down, that's when you need to add your decimal and a 0. And then I'm going to continue with my long division problem now that I've added my decimal and my 0. So as you can see, I went through my steps. I actually had to add another 0 in order to finish out my long division problem. But once again, I know that I have my final answer because I have a remainder of 0 down here at the bottom of my long division problem. So my final answer for the division problem 22 divided by 8 would be 2 75/100. So these 3 examples are examples of dividing whole numbers and decimals, or whole numbers by whole numbers, where you have to add a decimal into your division problem. So once again, you want to make sure that you're following the steps for dividing decimals. And in the case that you already have a whole number as your divisor, you're going to just use the traditional long division method in order to find your final answer.